Welcome to the 18th session of Bhutan Dialogues, happening every second Thursday of the month, right here at your UN House. My name is Vincent Namge and I work at Loden Foundation. Led by the United Nations in Bhutan and the Loden Foundation, the Bhutan Dialogues is an open space for critical and civil conversations with thought leaders and change makers drawing upon their expertise, achievements, and inspirations. It aims to invigorate development thinking, refine our ideas, and the pursuit of human progress. It is a forum for right speech and mindful listening. Now, in the past couple of months, our dedicated team from the United Nations in Bhutan and the Loden Foundation has been working very hard to try and see how we can take these Bhutan dialogues outside of this physical space. So as a result, we now have a website, www.bhutandialogues.bt, where you can have access to all the information from all the past sessions, upcoming sessions, where you can have access to registering for the sessions online, and also the website also gives you access to our YouTube channel. So all of our past YouTube videos have been uploaded on YouTube and you can watch them online. The website also gives you access to our podcast, which you can download on your iOS or Android phone. And to be honest, the app for the podcast is really easy to download. It takes just a few seconds to download the audio podcast, and once it's downloaded, you can listen to it offline. So our request for you today is to please visit our website at www.bhutandialogues.bt, and if possible, also go and like our Facebook page and share with your friends, colleagues, and your family members. Now, also another tip to remember Bhutan Dialogues by heart is every second Thursday of the month, and that's when the Bhutan Dialogues happen. But then again, today is Wednesday, so you must be wondering why Wednesday. We decided to host this month's edition of Bhutan Dialogue this Wednesday because tomorrow is the birth anniversary of Guru Rinpoche, an auspicious day and a national holiday for Bhutan. So what does it mean for us as individuals, for us as a country, the birth anniversary of Guru Rinpoche? Now, at the Loden Foundation, apart from our education initiative and the Loden Entrepreneurship Program, the third program at Loden Foundation is to document and promote Bhutan's oral tradition, digitize written heritage, and document it for future references. So it's a vast program area, so we have a team of people who are experts in this field. So earlier today, I took this opportunity to meet with my team and then requested them to share a few things about the significance of the day tomorrow. So I'd like to take this opportunity to relay the message from Michael, my team from Bhutan Foundation. Tomorrow, Bhutanese across the nation will celebrate the birth of Guru Rinpoche. Many religious meditation rituals involving worship of Padmasambhava will be conducted. Large thong drill depicting him unfurled and marks dances enacting his life will be performed in temples and zones. Most Bhutanese will visit temples and holy sites to pay homage to Guru Rinpoche and pray for health, wealth, long life, safety, happy rebirth, success in business, exams, and virtually in all affairs of life. Bhutanese particularly pray to Guru Rinpoche on this day as he has made a pledge to visit his devotees on this day in person through emanations, visions, dreams, and some other forms. People will spend the day in full awareness of Guru Rinpoche's transcendental and enlightened state and make prayer offerings to him. The Bhutanese world is believed to be imbued with Guru Rinpoche's presence and blessings. Thus, it is a very powerful time to carry out spiritual practices connected to Guru Rinpoche and to remember the inner values of non-violence, compassion, wisdom, and enlightenment, which Guru Rinpoche so thoroughly embodies. Now, on this note, let me take this opportunity to introduce today's session, and also a distinguished guest and a host for today. The theme for today is social media, emerging patterns and discourses. Now, I am no expert on social media, so therefore I went online and I found a blog which is being written and maintained by our very own guest speaker here. Among all the great articles that he's written, I managed to find this one article which was titled Managing Your Social Media. So here's a short paragraph I took from that article. The advent of democracy has put one requirement on us: media literacy. This was because no democratic process would be possible if people did not understand the mass media. Now we have yet another requirement that has come about so quickly: social media literacy. And unlike the former, where you could possibly choose not to, meaning you can live your life without watching a television or without reading a newspaper, social media and technologies such as mobile phones do not give you that choice. It is there with you, it follows you. The choice is you consume or be consumed. Please welcome our guest speaker for today, Mr. Dorji Wangchuck, who is currently a researcher, PhD candidate and teaching associate at the University of Macau, with research focus in social media, social linguistics, and discourse studies. He's an engineer, communication scholar, a documentary filmmaker, and an educator, also a dog lover, passionate about airplanes, and loves coffee and traveling. He has worked in the Bhutan Broadcasting Service from 1986 till 2006, where he led the team. Among all the things that he has achieved, he's led the team that brought the FM radio services and television to Bhutan. From 2009 to 2013, he has also served as the communications director and spokesperson for the Royal Office of Media, which is under His Majesty the King's Secretariat. He has also worked as a professor and a researcher with the Royal University of Bhutan. He's passionate about filmmaking and has won 3 major international awards and several nominations. Some of his notable documentaries include School Among Glaciers, which is available on YouTube, Rocking the Himalayan Kingdom, The Long Walk to Education. And our host for today, Mr. Gerald Daly. Now I know that Gerald and Dr. Krama Funzo prefers to keep their introduction as short as possible, so that we can have more time for discussion. Now, in the absence of Dr. Krama Funzo, who usually hosts the session, and Gerald is the one doing the introduction, I took this time, because Dr. Krama is not available today, he's out of the country, I decided to drop him a message on WhatsApp. Now I requested Dr. Krama, Doctor, please give me 1 or 2 liners to describe Gerald for the introduction, because he wants to keep it very short. So this is what Dr. Krama actually replies to me, and he's referring to Gerald. May look like a straight-jacket UN bureaucrat, but it's a curious, philosophical, and a practical Irishman. Gerald Daly is the resident coordinator of United Nations in Bhutan. Prior to his appointment as the RC in his current position, he served as a policy advisor and a team leader of joint funding and business operations in the United Development Group. His focus areas include ensuring cross-UN ownership and development of delivering as one at both strategic and operational levels, along with funding of integrated policy work. I'm almost at the end of my introduction, but I have 2 small announcements to make. Right after the session, we always open the floor for a simple tea and snack outside. Following after the tea and snack, there is a short add-on session. Today we have a special treat for you during the tea and snack. But before I go on to tell you what the special treat is, I want everyone to promise me that to really take the opportunity during the networking session to go and say hi to someone that you don't know, someone that you haven't met before, and say hi or kusuzampo and use that opportunity to get to know the person. So now the treat. Let me introduce to you a young and upcoming entrepreneur, Mr. Dorji. If you could please stand, thank you. Dashi here manufactures pouch yogurt with different varieties of flavor. While majority of the young people in Bhutan still prefer a 9-to-5 job, Dashi is one of those few handful of young people that we have in Bhutan who have had the courage to become an entrepreneur, who have had the courage to become self-employment, not only self-employed, but also created employment opportunities for 9 other young people in his company, who are all class 10 and class 12 pass outs. And Dashi's business is a social enterprise. His business, Lega Daily Delight, has committed to contribute 10% of his annual profit every year to charities across the country. So thank you, Dashi, for showing up here with your and giving us the opportunity to enjoy your yogurt sleeve. Thank you very much. And finally, we have for our add-on session, Pema Muidel. Pema, good stand up. Thank you very much. Pema will be leading the add-on session titled How to Succeed Academically. right? Pema is a mathematician and an author. Pema is author of books like Coming Home and Lomba, which were both written in 2008 and 2016 respectively. In 2008, when Pema completed her book Coming Home, she was the youngest author in Bhutan at the time. Pema graduated with highest honors from University of Texas, El Paso, Utah in 2018. She holds a bachelor's degree of science in mathematics. She was awarded the Academic and Research Excellence Undergraduate Student in Mathematics by the College of Science, Utah. And she is currently pursuing her postgraduate degree in teaching at the Samti College of Education. So please join Pema later, right after the networking session. Now finally, before I hand it over to Gerald, may I request everyone to put your mobile phones on silent. If possible, on flight mode, because as you can see, we have our colleagues over here who are recording the session to be uploaded after a week's time from today on our YouTube, on our website, and also to go on for the podcast. So we would really appreciate if your phones are put on flight mode so that there's no disruption. And please note that during the session, there will be time for you to ask questions to our guest speaker. That will happen during the Q&A session. And over to you, Gerald.
Dorji Wangchuck, good afternoon to you and good afternoon to everybody. Tell us about Dorji Wangchuck in less than 25 sentences.
Okay. There's not much that I have not revealed myself through my blogs and from my social media updates, but maybe it would be quite interesting to just say that I come from several lineages of religious families in the East. My great-grandfather was someone called Gelong Ngo, who came from Aja in Ajalam heritage from Bhutan and Bongar. And my great-grandmother came from, was the daughter of one of the most important religious family in Tawang. So why I'm saying this right in the front is that I was trained and groomed to be a monk by my grandfather, but I was rejected by Tashiang Rabde to become a monk. So to say that I started my life with a failure. And that's how my life began. My father was instrumental in bringing me into the modern education, and for much of my childhood, actually, I didn't see him. He was away from home, partly because he was recruited in the army. There were some border tensions between our giant neighbors around that time, and later he was inducted as a royal chauffeur in the court of Third King. And it was Third King who commanded that my father that he should put me and my sister into modern education. So that's how I ended up in the modern education. Otherwise, I would have been a monk, probably a Gongchen in the East. Other than that, my first job was as a helper in a plywood factory, and that was in 1982. And my last position in the government, as mentioned, was as the director of Royal Office for Media. So in many ways, I feel fortunate to have come a very long way. And this is something that I share with youngsters, because they don't want to do manual job. They don't want to, they wait for things to happen. You have to start somewhere. So I started up in Gale Plywood Factory as a helper. My job was to unload the trucks and feed the logs into the splicing machine.
A media person. Who or what influenced you to become a media person?
Around 2001, I was working as an engineer, and then I was also making some science documentaries, because we had the shortage of producers, and we were encouraged to make programs. And when these programs were aired, we started getting good feedbacks. So my former boss, Ambassador King Asinghe, suggested that I should move to production, that I was a better producer, not that I was a bad engineer, but he said that I was really good as a producer and I should consider moving. And I think he was instrumental in actually pushing me into documentary filmmaking and journalism.
At this point in time, my understanding is you've had more or less on your blog 400 hits, and on Facebook you have 4,600 followers. Why do you spend so much of your time in social media?
Okay.
And you're probably one of these social media influencers. To those people in the audience or those who are listening through our various podcast systems or YouTubes, what advice would you give to people who want to become social media influencers?
Okay. First thing, the reason why I blog is because of the simple fact that we as a nation, we are going through some of the most important historic moments, and I keep this repeating to my blogger friends that what we write now, what we write, actually will serve as a historical narrative of this very important period. So it's upon us to actually document this period through our own lives and feelings. So that is the main reason I blog, not to expect any major changes or to change anyone, but as a historical narrative. Second, I blog, I express my feelings or my disappointments or the achievements of our country. Because I think one of the requirements of us as individuals or as citizens in a democracy is that we express what we feel. We bring out the issues so that our leaders can make informed decisions. So in other words, we should remember that we are all here, we are all in this whole process of governance together. And so my job is to be a social critic, to be a mirror of what's happening. Of course, I know not everybody is happy with that, but I guess we all have to do our own jobs. Other thing that I would like to mention is that, of course, I have been advised by my friends, good friends, to keep shut, which I could, which would be very peaceful for me. I could enjoy my life, what life has given. Honestly, I'm okay from all what I've received from this universe. I cannot complain anything about my life. But then, as a citizen, as a member of a community, some of us have had this fortune of being a little more better placed, and so if we don't take care of the others who don't have the same level of influence in the society, we won't be doing justice to as a member of the community. So in other words, I'm actually expressing what others might be feeling, and that I think is a responsibility that we need to take. Lastly, I don't want to regret, we are all going to die, not tomorrow, hopefully not anytime soon, but I don't want to reach that stage where I regret not having stood for what I believe, not having done what I wanted to do, not having done something good to others. So that's why I do whatever I feel it's important, and whatever I feel is necessary.
Good. So a life without regrets. To live a life without regrets. Okay. So the media and the social media, we're going through a time of fast change here in Bhutan. Recently we had the possibility and discussions around the closing of the Dzongkha newspaper. We see that there's almost an explosion of appetite from Bhutanese people on social media, even people in remote villages. Everybody wants to be on some form of social media. So, as a media person, how do you see this state of media here in Bhutan?
Okay, mass media, to put it very simply or simplistically, media as an institution is in a bad shape, but the mass is actually communicating more than ever in human history. So when we talk about mass media, we need to segregate the mass and the media. Actually, there was a very nice article by Nirup Zangpo, the director of Bhutan Media Foundation, on the state of media. So I don't want to digress anything from what he said. I agree to whatever he has mentioned. Now, maybe as a communication scholar, I can explain to the audience here what is the necessity or the need for our media institutions. One of the study that I have done is the role of the Bhutanese media, meaning BBS and Quinsel, in the construction and formation of nationhood. So in other words, what I have looked at is how the media has played its role in the sense of nationhood. This line of philosophical thought comes from an Irish scholar by the name of Benedict Anderson, who defined nations as imagined communities. In other words, by imagined meaning that although we don't know, not everyone will know everyone in a community bigger than a village, we still have that sense of mutual connection. And that mutual connection is established by a couple of institutions, such as the media. So if you listen to the same song in Shinkarlauri or in Samtsi, you get that sense of connection. By serving in the military, you fight for the same country. You may have never met, but you are now soldiers in the, and of course the education system. Now, my generation and perhaps the generation before will agree that when we were growing up, we never referred to ourselves as Bhutanese. So we would say, so everyone used to call me Shachok, or Tashikamapa. And of course, I remember big groups of Bungtabs and Mangdevs and Bongobs and Parops. So we all referred to ourselves from where we came. We never referred to ourselves as Bhutanese. And this is also documented in the personal diaries of Father Mackey, where he also points out this. Now, in the last 30 years or so, Bhutan has been more united than ever in its history. And one of the institutions that has played its role, in my view, is the media. Because we all grew up listening to BBS radio, from Samtsi to Shinkarlauri to Tashikam. We all enjoyed the same song. We all listened to same Purvatine jokes. We discussed the same issue, you see. And this act of doing things together separately is what makes us a nation. This morning I was reading Punat Sangchu's project's news. I guess everyone has been discussing all over the country, but people in Assam or Fiji will not discuss about Punat Sangchu because they are not part of this nation. Okay? So that's why there is this very important role that the media plays in bringing us together as a nation, in keeping us together as a nation. So any decline in this institutionalized form of media actually worries me, because the social media, for all its goodness, is fragmenting the society. So we are forming small groups. So I have my village group. We just discuss. I don't watch BBS anymore. Sometimes I read TV. I read Quinsel. But I'm chatting with my village mates, with my friends on WhatsApp. So we spend a lot of time, and the social media, I think, has its own drawbacks when it comes to keeping ourselves as a nation. And this is something that I am a bit worried.
Okay, so over recent years, you have taken what I would call forward positions on a number of issues. The ones that stand out for me is some of the work you've done on mining, some of the work you've done on hydroelectricity. I also thought some of the work you've done on Wangdi Zong was forward-leaning. When you think back on those experiences, what would you do different today if you were writing
Absolutely nothing.
Those experiences? And could you remind us what positions you took?
Yeah. I wouldn't. Nothing has changed as far as I'm concerned with my position on mines and minerals and hydropower development in this country. On mines and minerals, very short answer. The Constitution requires it to belong to the state. So I think the case does not warrant even a debate. On the hydropower, actually I'm not against hydropower development. I'm against accelerated hydropower development, which are two different things. I'm an engineer by profession. My first degree was in electrical engineering. I worked in Chuga hydropower project when it was being constructed as a 17-year-old student. My boss was Dorji Wangchuck, who is the Secretary of Power right now. He was an assistant engineer. Later, as a documentary filmmaker, I documented the entire construction phase of Tala project. So it's not that I am expressing opinions of my cuff or something else, but I talk with some experience and some expertise. It has always been worrying that the size of projects that we undertake. My students will remember a classwork that we did in Sherapsi, where I calculated the damage that Punachangchu 1 would do, which has today now come to, unfortunately, the sad reality. But let me just quickly give three things. I don't actually like to talk about hydropower anymore because it's a dead horse now. But what are my three positions? First is that we need to go slow. First is that we need to go small, and the third is that we need to let our people catch up with the whole technological development in the hydropower. Going slow meaning that we need to take up smaller projects because the dominant discourse on hydropower has been clean energy, self-liquidating loans, and a big untapped market. Now, if you change the discourse into something else, for example, employment, we will see that the argument gets weakened because how many people have been employed by Tala and Chuka? Hardly 800, because any economic development has to happen with a parallel increase in employment, because otherwise people are not going to reap the benefit of any economic development. So my approach would have been, or would be, that we build smaller ones, more of those, something like Bashu project, something like Kurishu project, which are manageable, which are done on time or ahead of time. Bashu was done ahead of time, and which creates more employment, which does not put us into debt, and lastly, that if we wait for a few more years, new technologies are coming into market which are more efficient, which are cheaper, and by then I would think that people in DGPC and CDCL would also be able to bid for those projects, and we will be building the hydropower. So that has always been my position, and it still is. But I'm happy that this present government has at least put on hold and is analyzing or reviewing this whole accelerated development. As I said, it's not the hydropower development per se that I'm against, but the accelerated, which actually worries me.
Good. So, Dorji, you may be aware that we have a number of people in the audience who want to ask tough questions. So I want to give them as much time as possible to ask you tough questions. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do what I call rapid fire questions.
Okay.
You can go into them in detail if you wish, or you can just say, this is where we were, this is where I was at, or this is my opinion, or you can be focused. First question. You spent a number of years with BBS. Why did you choose to leave?
Internal politics. Yeah. It was quite sad to see the whole organization that I built suddenly turn against me. It was quite a difficult decision to leave. I still feel very bad for many people that have unconditionally worked for me, but I had to leave. And also, interestingly, one thing that helped me to decide when I left, when I was trying to quit BBS, was a line that I read of His Majesty the Fourth King, who talked about why we had to go for democracy. And the line was something like, we should plan for bad times when the going is good. And I looked at myself and said, wow, like, yeah, of course, like, I'm doing great. I had just won a big award in Korea. I was declared as one of the top 10 filmmakers, documentary filmmakers in Asia in 2006. So I thought that was the very good time to leave, because if I left when I was not capable of doing anything, not capable of carrying a camera or write a story, no one was going to hire me. So I thought I should leave when when I was at the top of my game. So I quit.
Reminding us once again of no regrets. You also had a radio station. Why did you move on from that opportunity?
It's still there. It's still there. It's just that it's in deep freeze, meaning that we had some serious problem with the equipment. But the other thing that me and Choling, we decided was that, what if someone files a legal suit while I'm away? If my RJ says something bad, everybody is looking for legal, to give some jobs to lawyers these days. So I didn't want my studies to be interrupted and then me having to fly back here. So I said, why don't we ask Big Mud that we could suspend for. So it's there. We are paying the license fees and still paying the taxes. But we would be
Okay.
Up and running soon.
Deep freeze. I'm going to remember that term. Okay, participants in the audience, if you have a pen or a means of communication, you may want to write down the following responses. Okay, you ready? The first question is, because you are almost a guru on blogging and Facebooks, you essentially personify somebody for me who's a lifelong learner. Which two Facebookers do you recommend following? Because they help you to understand something about life.
Okay. Not anyone in particular, but I would think Dorji Wangchuck of CBS makes me think sometimes. I also like my friend Pasang Pasusri. He is every time he's always positive about life. So these are the two I would recommend following if you are not following them already.
And which two bloggers do you recommend reading?
Ishii Dorji, the photographer and the environmental activist, because he does his research and he writes very well and he's very passionate. I can relate to what he does. And the second blogger, I used to follow Amrit Suba for a long time. In recent times, I'm actually intrigued by the positivity and the energy that Thring Denker exudes, because the whole the media, both the social media and the traditional media, is full of negativity. So Denker, with her Denker getaway, actually takes me to see nice things about Bhutan. So that would be another blogger that you might like to follow.
And then Instagram. Which two Instagram accounts would you recommend?
I like Pao Chuning Dorji. He takes the best photographs that I know of, but he is also a very a person of substance. He writes well. He writes things that are very deep, and it's always nice to read and look at those pictures. The other Instagram handle that I follow is a friend of mine who is a Singaporean actress and activist called Nadia Hutagalong. She is a Singaporean Australian, and she basically champions environmental protection, especially trying to save elephants in Africa and in Southeast Asia. So I follow her work. I follow her because I know her personally, but she's very inspiring.
Friends, we've come to that point in time where we invite you to give us your toughest questions, because we obviously have a great mind at work. And for us to really see the deeps and the depths, we need some great questions.
I'm from Kazoo FM. So my question for you is, I read a book by Nico Mele called The End of Big, and it talks about how media institutions like Google, Facebook, all these big organizations will eventually replace old institutions like the law and even like government institutions in the future. And it's already, we can see similar things happening in America with Google, people who've worked at Google also working simultaneously for the White House. So do you think a similar thing might happen to Bhutan in the future with now the growing presence of social media and all these different media organizations?
Internally, no, meaning that we will not have anything similar to Google coming up within our own industry. But one thing to be aware of or to take into consideration is the possibility whereby the social media is being used to destabilize nations, including Bhutan. So it's not an impossibility. I think the elections of 2016 in the US and the Brexit vote in the UK have proved that external forces can influence voting patterns in different countries. So more than having a media, big media houses coming up within the country that is a threat to the society and governance, I would rather worry about factions that might try to destabilize our society. And I may be wrong, but I would think that half of the people in the Bhutanese news forum are not Bhutanese. They just invent name as Sangye Phunso or Dorji Wangchuck, and then they put the Thosampas against the Shachobs and Porobs against Pumtabs. So these are the things that we may need to be aware of. So it is possible that from my laptop somewhere in the North Pole, I can influence an election in Chile or in Bhutan. So that is something that we should be worried. On Google and Facebook and this big media conglomerate, yes, they are becoming too powerful, and it's a discussion I think is happening right now everywhere, including the EU. Yeah, these are really taking over the whole system of governance and influencing greatly in decision making. And of course, one thing that you might have read in that book, I don't know if they have pointed out, is the concept of disruptive technology, meaning that whatever Google does, whatever Facebook does, or whatever Silicon Valley does, is that they want to disrupt the current flow of events and phenomena. That's their ultimate goal. So that is something that we may need to be aware of. So Google is not God. Facebook is not angel. So you may want to be aware of what they are. I mean, they are not there to help the humanity, definitely. So yeah, that's what I would like to share. Thanks for the question.
Thank you, Dorji and Gerald. I'm Tashi from Bhutan Foundation. My straight question is, you did talk a lot about creating awareness. As you and I know that the level of penetration of social media in Bhutan, especially in rural areas. So how do we make aware of the integrity and self-censorship, at least to some extent, by knowing the risks, by knowing the pros and cons of using social media, apart from bloggers like yourself and people who are influencers, creating that awareness, what would be necessary so that our rural folks especially is aware of the risks and pros and cons, the strength and weakness of the the platforms that they're using. Otherwise, this could create the greatest risk in dividing or in using it adversely.
Yeah. I think I'm tempted to say education, but that holds only for people who are either going to school or have been to school. For the rural folks, I would think that the traditional media can actually play an important role, especially my previous organization, the BBS, because it has the best penetration in the rural areas. Whatever BBS says is actually almost divine for many of our rural folks. So if our government and the foundations can actually work with BBS on some form of public service information and announcements, that would be something that I would really. But of course, on the other hand, anyone has the responsibility and actually can also influence. I follow two big groups. One is called Bhutan Broadcasting Service, which is an animal activist group. The other is a group of school teachers, and I find there, anyone who brings out these issues actually manages to come up with new practices or to abort certain practices. Yes, I think as soon as you see something that is not right, I think it's very important for you to, as a citizen, to bring out. We are not a big country, by the way, and that's something that I always get my motivation from. Whatever we do, whatever you do, actually can impact very much within our own society. That's why I was quite shocked when I was driving to Bhutan and back. So many people, so many cartons of Red Bull being sold, and I just remembered during my health checkup in a hospital in Bangkok, there was a notice that if you have taken this and this and this, including Red Bull, you might want to postpone your urine test. So which means that so that's the reason I put out that notice. Not sure really whether it's that bad, but it's my responsibility as a more exposed individual to let everyone in my Facebook friendship know that you need to be a little careful with certain. So likewise, I think it's very important if each one of us take up that responsibility too. Yes, just to repeat my recommendation, I think BBS would be the best forum to get to our rural population.
Hi, long time no see. We keep seeing on social media quite often. Hi, Gerald.
Hi.
My question is with regard to overuse of social media. I think there are research findings that addiction to social media is even more dangerous than actual substance abuse. What does your research reveal?
I haven't really done on the negative impact of technology or social media because there are many who are already doing that. But of course, I have read extensively, and one of the findings or one of the research shows that actually using the social media or abusing the social media is as good as consuming cocaine. In that, what they have found was that when you consume cocaine or marijuana, especially cocaine or heroin, our brain releases one chemical called dopamine, which then makes you feel good, feel high, feel fulfilled, but it's for a very short period of time. And then that's when you again indulge in another dose of cocaine. Earlier I said about disruptive technology. That's the kind of behavior that this big social media giants wants us to do. So they want us to be addicted. If you check your phone right now and see, for example, the Facebook alerts or the WeChat alerts, that alert is in red. Okay, 3 messages or 5 messages or 10 messages. That prompts you to see, get curious, and then get back to the social media. So that is the same behavior that you would do if you are addicted to cocaine and heroin, the drugs. So it's not. I mean, to put it bluntly, it's you have to be careful. You have to be careful about your children using social media or being on a social media for just too long. If you have noticed, Kesang, you will agree that for example, I unplug, I disappear for a week or 2, sometimes for 3 weeks, every 3 months, because I don't want to be addicted to social media. I use social media, but then I don't let social media use me. So I think you should be aware of that. It is as good as consuming any form of illicit drugs.
Recently, in one of your blogs, Dorji, I came across I found it to be an incredibly powerful sentence. I'm going to say it twice, so if you don't catch it the first time because of my Irish accent, you'll catch it the second time. We are descendants of givers from the top and not receivers of alms from the bottom. We are descendants of givers from the top and not receivers of alms from the bottom. If by some bizarre opportunity you were a minister in the current government, what policy actions would you be recommending to ensure the youth stay actively engaged with democracy?
Okay. First of all, I may never become a minister, because nobody's going to vote for me with all the enemies that I've made in my career as a journalist. To put it very bluntly, I think I would change this emerging culture that we have developed around being a politician. In other words, I think being a member of a political party or being a candidate is almost looking like it's a crime. So you cannot join here, you cannot get back here, you cannot apply that job, or you have to have cooling period and so on and so forth. I don't contest the fact that it might have been done with good intentions, but the collateral effect it is having is that politics is dirty, politics is bad, and unless you have no other job, you can go there. That's the message that we are giving. But politics is not dirty. The word politics comes from a Greek word polis, which means running the cities. So that's why we have cities like Minneapolis, Indianapolis. It means running the city, and it's a very big responsibility. Running a city. Referring to the city states of Athens during the Greek period. So being a politician should not be dirty, should not be bad. And I think the more we keep this open within our youth, so in other words, that we allow university students to be active member of political parties, or for political process to happen in the universities and in some youth clubs and so on and so forth, might help to get our youth interested in politics, and then thereby in the whole process of democracy. Because otherwise, we will just be having, as I mentioned in my Facebook update a few days back, we will just be electing one prime minister every 5 years, and then voting for the Truk star every day. And that's not a great way to be a democracy.
Okay.
Of course, I'm not contesting the democratic setup of our Truk star and our reality shows.
As we were preparing for this Bhutan Dialogues, I came across a new term, FOMO, F-O-M-O, fear of missing out. apparently this is something that some Bhutanese people have on the top of their mind, their FOMO. So with your experience and knowledge, what is the best way to avoid FOMO?
Well, that's the fear of missing out is a psychological condition where people experience when working in organizations and pursuing their career. Interestingly, I think before even the advent of social media, we as Bhutanese, I think we had this condition, the fear of missing out. So that may be the reason why everyone wanted to be in Thimphu. And so in the last 20 years, Thimphu has certainly grown because everybody wants to be in Thimphu and not miss out on the opportunities. And of course, now the social media has, as you were mentioning, has completely taken this into the next level. So everybody feels missed out when I post my selfie from Paro Airport, flying to Finland or to Singapore. The thing about any psychological condition is to be aware of who you are, what you are, and what you are capable of. In other words, I think a more training in mindfulness would help. Training in trying to be yourself and not try to be copy someone might help. And then to get back to our traditional way of thinking in the Bhutanese society, that whatever happens will happen. It's your destiny will come irrespective of whether you get to fly or not, whether you're posted in Jembang or in Thimphu. I think these kind of thinkings might reinforcing this kind of substantive thinking might help. But I don't have a direct answer because I'm not a psychologist, because this is a psychological condition.
So you're probably 2-3 years into your PhD by now. And it's your PhD is quite complex. Sociolinguistics, discourse studies. So could you tell us, kind of make this really simple for me?
Okay.
Could you tell me 2 or 3 things based on 2 or 3 years of your study in Macau about socio and linguistics and discourse studies, which help you to really understand the society you come from,
Yes.
like differently. Like when you figured this stuff out, you said, wow. So if you could give me a couple of wows from your understanding now of Bhutan, based on what you've learned in Macau.
Okay, sociolinguistics is basically an area of study that looks at language, what language does to a society. So I'm not a linguist. It is basically that I see how languages are applied to a society and how it changes or it transforms or it maintains. So one of the study that I've done within this area is very simple. I asked a question to myself: why are the Shachops, my people, why do we have big families? Because if you come with me after Bumtang, we will have to stop every 5 minutes because I have to say hello to my relative, and actually half of the country is actually related to me. Fortunately, my wife is Japanese, so the other half is not related. So I could practice my journalism without fear. Basically, the conclusion of my study was that we, in societies which has very rich terminologies to address your relatives, that society is very big and cohesive. So those who are Changlas and Chachus will know that for every cousin of any degree, we have a term. Okay, so or like for example, we have a term for father, of course. Father's brother has one term. Father's younger brother has another term. Mother's elder sister has one term. Mother's younger brother has brother has one term. So we have Apchi, Amchi, Azem, and I counted that we have something like 33 terminologies, terms of address, as opposed to 10 or 11 in Dzongkha. Now these terminologies are not just referential or indexical. It doesn't just serve to index someone within your mindset, but it actually creates an emotional bonding. So in other words, if I call someone Amchi or Azem, the relation will be very different if I call her by name, which you guys do in the West. So that's why you guys are so poor with your relatives. You don't know your. Whereas because of these rich terminologies in Changla, that explains actually why we have a large networks of families. No? We say Shachugin Nerami, that's a term. Now the implication of this study is that with modernization, with urbanization, new terminologies have come into more. So everyone is called uncle. My daughter refers to as uncle every male of my age, or madam, and that will have a huge long-term implication on the cohesiveness of the society. So those who are from, please refrain or teach your children to call your relatives with the exact terminology, okay? Because that's very important for the cohesiveness of our society. Holds true for Dzongkha and even more so for Changla and the Losang community. Very, very rich terminology. Whereas Discourse Studies is another field of study that looks at mainly how language can change the tone of any discussion in a society. And so there I've just started, meaning that what we look at is that we look at the greater meanings of just the sentence, okay? So there is a sentence, okay? But we don't just go by the sentence, what it means, but what is the greater context and meanings that we can derive? Because sometimes we don't speak everything, right? So like for example, if we have agreed to have a coffee this evening, and then I'm waiting for you to say the time and place, and you disappear, I would text to you like, so Jerry, no, that will be the text, and you would understand. Oh my God, like I was supposed to find a place and the time for us to have a coffee, right? So by studying these what we call the utterances, by studying these what is being discussed, what is being said, what is being unsaid, what is being not said, we can derive a lot of understandings of a society. So right now my study is obviously on the Great Australia Rush, and the question is it just the money that is pulling people to Australia, or is there something more? So that is the research question that I'm looking at. And I'm looking at I look at Facebook posts. I'll be doing interviews. So what is it that teachers are not happy? What is it that civil servants are resigning? So from the assumption that human behaviors happen not just by what is spoken or what is being explained. They are also being talked about, and there are signs and symptoms that will appear in the daily interactions, in the social media, And as a academic, yeah, that's what we do in that field.
I get it. Okay, so we have probably about 5 minutes left, and we have to do the impossible within 5 minutes. So can you, I was at a meeting recently and somebody also was running out of time, and he asked everybody to answer questions in the form of tweet, really sharp focused.
Okay.
The first question is, what scares you?
Nothing. Because I have nothing to be scared of.
The second one is, what is the funniest thing that has happened to you recently?
Okay, funny thing. Over the Christmas break, I was flying in, and a protocol officer, probably from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, asked me if I was a delegate from Japan, and if I could give my baggage tag to her. I said, no, I'm a Bhutanese. And that was very funny because during the flight, the captain happened to be my friend, and he was joking to me that I may need a visa soon to enter Bhutan. So that continued, and when that thing happened, I laughed my life out. It was so funny.
Good. What was a situation you handled poorly in the past, and how would you do it different today?
Oh, many. Actually, I failed more than I ever succeeded in my life. I think, but it will be very difficult for me to pinpoint one situation or one case. But to be very honest, I don't. One thing I don't live with regrets. Whatever I do or whatever I have decided, I always put the best intentions, and I decide. Then of course things are not always good, but I accept. And so honestly, I wouldn't think of anything I would do differently. I think if I could live my life again, I would relive every single minute. I would do all the rubbish things that I've done, all the things that I have sort of got into. I would get into. Yeah.
Cool. Throughout your career with teams, what tips did you use to motivate them? So could you share with us your tips on how you motivate teams?
I never gave orders. I never asked my people to do this or do that. It was always, let's do it together, and that worked very well for me. And of course, I also did it. I mean, when we were installing the antennas on the tower, I would be on the topmost, because that was the most dangerous place to be, and I didn't want any of my members to be where I didn't want to be. So I would be at the highest point, and that was one thing, to do it together. Secondly, I think I have been very good at taking care of my people, being there. So as a leader, or as a member of a family, or as a head of the family, those who work for you or those who are working with you have to feel that my supervisor or my boss will stand by me if anything happens. So my position always was, do things, take initiatives, if you want to mess something big, and I'll defend, and I've done that. And I think so very big things like FM radio and television happened because we took all those risks. So be there. That's the key message.
3 last questions. I have to do this super fast. I'm pronouncing this really wrong, but earlier on in your at the start of this, you spoke about your descendants, that you are part of a lineage. This could be called Goje?
Choje, yeah.
Choje. What is your personal spiritual practice, and how does it work for you?
Simplistically, I must say that I had to balance between my own inner spiritual pursuit, which is the essence of Buddhism, because Buddhism in Dzongkhe or Tsangla is called religion of the inner, Nangpoiche. But as the leader of the clan, because I have a member of 30-40 members within my big family, I had to balance between my own inner pursuit and then all the outer rituals and performances that we have to conduct. I mentioned several lineages. Those several lineages now tantamounts to something like we have to appease 17, 18 deities and gods. We have to do something like 5-6 big rituals in a year, which I do it with great honor and privilege. So there is the performance part that we have to do, but I've always found it very it was a very difficult balance of to keeping the tradition and then as well as going into more inner introspection.
In terms of the future, what are 3 things you would wish to see in Bhutan's future?
Okay, I hope we have a clear roadmap. I don't expect solutions or problems to be solved, but I hope we have a clear direction on where we are going in terms of 3 areas: education, employment, and economy. If we can fix these 3, then I would think that we are on the right path. That would be my dream. So after 3 years or 5 years, at least we have a plan. We have a flight plan.
Good. And the last question then is, as usual, what are the 2 books that have influenced you the most?
Okay. These 2 books. Of course, this one is this is Beyond Sky and Earth by Jame Zappa. I think it's a favorite of many Bhutanese, and that's one book that influenced me to be a teacher. I always told myself, one day I'm going to be a teacher. And when that opportunity came through an offer from the Royal University to go and start off the media course in Sharapsi, I just took it. Now I still read that book and I still laugh at especially what happens in Zebar. I think that is the best chapter there. This one is quite funny because this is a big corporate guy in America, Lee Iacocca, who was the president of Ford, and so you might wonder, why does this guy follow or like the book? The reason is my leaving BBS was very much similar to how Lee Iacocca was booted out from Ford company, and he goes on to reinvent, and he keeps telling you have to reinvent, and that was the message that I got from this book, and I kept telling me I have to reinvent myself, and I have to and that is something that I have sort of perfected. So it's quite an interesting book, and of course I got to know another country much better after reading the life of this guy.
Colleagues, participants, friends, please join me in thanking Dorji for a great session.